Your Excellency, Mr. For Isozim Nyasipe, President of the Togolese Republic, Madam Prime Minister, the Speaker of Parliament, Dr. Akin Wumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank, Chairman of the Board of Africa50 and Co-Chair of the Africa50 General Meeting, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Togolese government, and more specifically Mr. Sani Yayo, Minister of Economy and Finance and Co-Chairman of Africa50. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Africa50 Board, ambassadors, heads of mission, representatives, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, journalists, ladies and gentlemen, and in particular the guest of honor. It is a privilege for me to take the floor at the opening ceremony of Africa50 Shareholders AGM, Infra for Africa Forum. Let me start off by paying glowing tribute to you, Your Excellency, President of the Republic, for honoring us with your presence here. Thanks for your personal support, assistance, and the warm welcome granted us. Let me also express my heartfelt thanks for the Togolese government cooperation and unwavering support for Africa50 and for our term in office. We do engage with several government entities, in particular the Ministry of Economy and Finance, and I must say that our engagements are smooth. When it comes to infrastructure projects, challenges often emerge along the way, and this applies to all countries in the world, regardless of the sector. What we really appreciate in Togo is that we interact with the government in a proactive and constructive fashion to find solutions, and that makes the difference in terms of bringing projects to fruition and attracting the private sector. This is a true reflection of your leadership, Your Excellency, Mr. President, and I wish to thank you for setting this example and guiding us in constantly searching for positive results for the well-being of the people and businesses in Togo and Africa. It is therefore with great pleasure that we organize the first edition of Infra for Africa Forum on Togolese soil in Lomé, a city steeped in history, the crossroad of African trade that has today become a leading logistics and business hub in the region and on the continent. I would also like to express my gratitude to the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akin Wumi Adesina, who is also the Chairman of the Board of Directors. Dear Chairman, you've always been an unwavering supporter for Africa50, and your enlightened leadership has supported the development and growth of our institution, for which I'm grateful. We are indeed proud to be able to support your great ideas for Africa, for example, through initiatives such as Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, African Investment Forum, and rest reassured that Africa50 will always be there to make its contribution. I have special thoughts for the members of the Board of Directors, whom I thank for their dedication and their sound advice, which contribute every day to the success of Africa50. To our shareholders here today and those who couldn't make it, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing support and confidence. They continue to place in us to accomplish our mission, which is based on three strategic pillars. Firstly, develop bankable projects. Secondly, financing infrastructure. Thirdly, mobilize capital in Africa and across the world to finance African infrastructure. This year, we would want to organize an event where we can demonstrate that the continent is not only a land of opportunity, but also a united Africa that is in control of its destiny while forging international alliances for its prosperity. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we structured this event around three key aspects. First of all, innovation. We try to embody a pioneering spirit through our transactions. Africa50, with the support of ADB, developed the first asset recycling program in Africa, and today we are delighted to welcome Togo, the Gambia, Zimbabwe as the first country to join this program with emblematic assets such as the Lomé-Balime Road, the Senegambia Bridge, and when it comes to Zimbabwe, the Harare, Bulawayo, and Victoria Forest Airport. Another great event Africa50 initiated is the establishment of a PPP for the development of electricity transmission lines in Kenya in partnership with Power Grid in India. Up until now, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the electricity transmission subsector in Africa has never before benefited from such private infrastructure, and indeed we are proud. The spirit of innovation enables us to speed up growth in our institution by working with partners, in particular African champions, whom we support enthusiastically. Let me thank all partners, many of whom are in our midst today. I would want to mention a few. Senelec in Senegal, with whom we develop Malikunda Power Station, Power Internet funded by Africa50, providing very affordable internet access in poorly served areas in Kenya. UBAB, MTN subsidiary, we signed a finance agreement to interact or interconnect 10 African countries from the east coast to the west, and the scanning system company, we are deploying joint border posts in several African countries in West Africa to make border transit more fluid. And Axin Group on hydroelectric power station project in Madagascar. These are transformative projects that embody the notion of the African champions. Thanks to your commitment and determination, together we can bring great projects to fruition, providing essential services to people, and combine development impact with financial profitability in various sectors in our continent. This forum will allow us to forge new partnerships through the signing of co-development and co-financing agreements. Second aspect, a quick one, and we celebrate this during this forum, mobilizing African resources. In addition to international capital, we need to keep on looking for them for infrastructure. This afternoon, no fewer than 12 African institutional investors will sign agreements confirming their investment or their intention to invest in the Africa50 Infrastructure Acceleration Fund. Bringing together such a large number of African institutional investors around the table is a great event in Africa. It's an example of Africa mobilizing to find solutions to African challenges. I would want to personally thank, and deep from my heart, Your Excellency, President for Isozum Nanyasingbe, for your support in implementing these Pan-African initiative and projects. When we were starting, he saw what we can gain. He supported us right from word go. And this victory today, Your Excellency, is yours as well. I will have the opportunity to say more about this at our signing ceremony this afternoon. Let me now say special thanks to my colleagues on the management team and to all my colleagues at Africa50 for their hard work and dedication to Africa. All this investment, partnership, results, and even this event that brings us together today are the fruit of their hard work and passion for Africa. I'm so proud of them. Heartfelt thanks to them. I would also like to express my gratitude to members of the Board of Directors for their wise advice and their unfailing support. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will end with a message that is particularly close to my heart. That is the third topic, that is the speed of execution. Africa 50 is now in its sixth year of operation. We invested equity in 21 infrastructure projects across 22 countries with a total value of over 6.6 billion US dollars. At Africa 50, we believe that the opportunity cost of delaying the implementation of infrastructure projects can be very high and have a huge impact on the growth of our country. This is why in Africa 50 we attach particular importance to the speed of implementation of the projects that we support. For example, on some of the projects such as the Malikunda power station, we managed to start the construction phase 18 months ahead of schedule. This was possible because we decided to inject our own funds and begin construction of the power plant even before financing was available. We did this by relying on local banks led by Orabank Group, provided bridging loans that made it possible to kickstart the construction. This is the kind of calculated risk we want to prepare in order to implement this project. Generally speaking, our culture is to constantly try to find ways of moving forward with the implementation once the main issues have been resolved, and not wait until everything is settled before moving forward. We don't want to wait for everything to be perfect before going ahead. We are aware of the enormous needs of our continent, which must be met as soon as possible. We understand the expectations of our people. This is why we really need to act with real sense of urgency. By 2030, that is in 7 years, 1 in 5 people in the world will be African. This will be largely young people looking for opportunities. We owe it to them to move fast and deploy infrastructure that will need to flourish, create companies, innovate, communicate, and build the future they aspire to. Africa future is being played out here, and so we need to take up that challenge of creating the infrastructure necessary for the continent's growth. I thank you for your rapt attention.
Son Excellence, Monsieur Faure Gnassingbé.
His Excellency Mr. Faure Gnassingbé, President of the Republic of Togo, and my dear brother and friend. His Excellency Mrs. Victoire Dogbe, Prime Minister for the Republic of Togo, Madame the Speaker of the House, Mrs. Tsegan, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, member of the government, in particular the Minister of Finance, Sani Yaya, my dear brother, Mr. General Director of Africa 50, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board of Africa 50, ladies and gentlemen, shareholders of Africa 50, ladies and gentlemen, partners of Africa 50, Mr. Tijan Thiam, our special guest and my brother, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Directorate and the staff of Africa 50, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to you all. Good morning to you all. I have the great pleasure to welcome you to the Africa 50 General Shareholders Meeting and to the inaugural Infra 50 Africa Forum. Please allow me to first thank my dear brother, Mr. President, His Excellency Mr. Faure Gnassingbé, President of the Republic of Togo, for having invited to host the general meeting of the board of Africa 50, and for having granted or graced us with his presence at this meeting. Before going any further, before coming in, I talked a little with Mr. President, and I told him that the hall was full, and there was a reason for that. There are not many head of states who come with the experience of private sector, and you are a president who comes with the experience of private sector. So when we talk of private sector, it's like a magnet. So you draw people when we're talking about private sector. So please clap for the President. I'd like to also thank the Prime Minister, Mrs. Victoire Dubé, and the Minister, Sani Yaya, for their unwavering support. I particularly wish welcome to all the ministers and representatives of representatives of the shareholders, the members of the board of Africa50, the CEO Alain Eboubousset. Alain has been doing an excellent work. He's been doing an excellent work. To the directorate and the staff of Africa50, as well as the other representative or partner institutions, including the Vice President of the African Development Bank. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, just about 10 days ago, some of us were in Paris during the summit for a new financial pact on the initiative of President Emmanuel Macron. During the discussions, the questions of knowing where to further develop the resources at the global level to accelerate the implementation or the achievement of sustainable development goals, to fight against climate change, and also on the indebtedness the problems that the countries are faced with, and feel the problems of lack of infrastructure in the countries. Africa would need 277 billion US dollars per year until 2030 to reach those objectives. The objective in matters of financing climate change and promote green growth, according to the conditions decided at the national level. It would be necessary to have a lot of resources to support the accelerated development of Africa. Green growth, regional integration, in particular in the areas of infrastructures. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is the reason why last week in Paris, I underscored the need to redesign the special drawing rights to African Development Bank. Indeed, the African Development Bank can multiply by 3 or 4 the leverage effect of the special draft draw. This means that it will need to mobilize more financing to also support all the regional banks, all the regional development banks in Africa. And we know that in Africa50, we know that there are many of them. There is also the ADB and all people who are here, that president of banks that are here. And affecting $250 to development would make it possible to raise up to 1,000 billions of African US dollars for the development in Africa. I am happy to observe, Mr. President, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has greeted the proposal of the African Development Bank to use this draft to unleash financing at the global level. This measure would make it possible to make resources available to finance the mitigation and adaptation to climate change, agricultural infrastructure, transport, digital, airport, water and sanitation, education, as well as health. The new resources will make it possible to support Togo and other countries, African countries. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Togo is a country that is transforming rapidly with an exceptional leadership of His Excellency, Mr. President. With the objective of becoming a center of regional transit, essential for Africa, essential for West Africa. A hub, a regional hub for the air transport with Sky Airlines, and as a main stakeholder, regional hub for the maritime transport and the logistics. The port of Lomé being essential transit port. The airport of Lomé is a modern airport which meets the global standards in areas of security systems. Togo has also been investing a lot in road infrastructures and transport infrastructures. And as a key component of the Abidjan-Lagos highway, for regional integrations. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the African Development Bank has invested massively in Togo. And Mr. President, there is a reason for that. It is because Togo is bankable, and you as President, you are bankable. The bank is the biggest partners of development of countries that are very involved in the support to agricultural sector. We have invested more than $32 million to promote an inclusive growth of the sector with the participation of the private sector. And we have reinforced the sovereignty, food sovereignty by reducing the import of essential crops such as rice, corn, and soya. The African Development Bank has provided €60 million for the constructions and the export and the managing of a container terminal in Togo. The capacity of the containers terminals was brought to 1 million containers of 20-foot containers. The bank has supported the government strategy for the employment of youth by providing $24 million to SMEs with high potential of growth created by young youth under the form of financial and non-financial services. The bank has facilitated development of 20,000 affordable housings thanks to a technical assistance of $5 billion to help the government prepare the structuring of this project. The bank has also supported the project of rural electrifications with $3.7 million to provide electricity to 317 communities through 5 regions, and by using mini solar grid to contribute to the objective of Togo of giving universal access to electricity by 2030. I am also happy to underscore that the Group of African Development Bank has funded the infrastructure for the reconstruction of markets in Togo, particularly the market of Kara, so as to stimulate economic activities and citizen access to market for basic crops. Ladies and gentlemen, I am, as president of the bank, I'm also the chairman of the board of Africa50. I can tell you, Your Excellency, Mr. President, that I'm very proud of Africa50. I'm very particularly pleased, Mr. President, that Africa50 is committing in the recycling of assets with Togo. So it is one of the PPP projects that is funded by the government and regional private investors. Africa50 is doing a remarkable work as an institution by developing projects all the way to their bankability and by financing them. Our main objective is to contribute to fill the infrastructure financing gap in Africa, which is a tune of $68 to $108 billion per year. Over the last 6 years of activity, Africa50 has received the support of all Africa, and today 31 countries are members of their shareholders and 3 institutional investors, with a total capital of a little less than $1 billion. Africa50 has invested in infrastructure, essential infrastructures, to the value of more than $6.6 billion. Very well done. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Africa50, in collaboration with the African Development Bank, has been investing in hydroelectric project Nachtigal in Cameroon, which will provide 420 megawatt and will increase the installed capacity of the country by 20%. Africa50 and the African Development Bank have co-invested in the project of thermal power plant in Malikunda in Senegal, which will provide 120 megawatt of electricity. This plant was inaugurated at the beginning of this year. The investment of Africa 50 in the power plant of Azuram produces 461 megawatt of electricity in a company that provides roughly 10% of the effective production capacity of Nigeria. Africa 50 has also invested in the 6 solar grids of power plants in Bemba, which provide 400 megawatt of electricity in Egypt in the context of the solar pact of 1,500 megawatt, one of the biggest in the world. In the other sectors of energy, transport and logistics, or numeric digital infrastructures, Africa 50 has been playing gradually and strategic role to fill the deficit of investment. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the strategical work on the way is facilitated by the deployment of acceleration funds in Africa to the tune of $500 million, the first platform of infrastructure for launched by Africa 50. The whole team of funds is in place, and it is already guaranteeing the financing of these investments. The African Development Bank is happy to invest $20 million in the funds and catalytic investment, which has made it possible to attract a number of institutional investors. I'm very happy that Africa 50 has more than 10 institutional investors, African, who have signed the subscription agreement or the letter of intentions to commit their capital in this fund. It is impressive, and it is a first in Africa, and I thank you. With the fund, we would make it possible for Africa 50 to play a key role in the exploitation of $98,000 billion of assets in the world. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we can do a lot more to fill the deficit of infrastructure in Africa. Most of the infrastructures having not yet been built in Africa, we have an excellent opportunity to build green infrastructures and to green the existing infrastructures. Africa has an enormous potential in matters of renewable energy. This is the reason why the African Development Bank and its partners have been investing $20 billion in the project, which aims to develop 10,000 megawatt of solar energies in 11 countries of the Sahel region of Africa, so as to provide electricity to 250 million people. Your Excellency, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, it is this ambition which is also sustained the joint creation of the Alliance for the Green Infrastructure in Africa between the African Development Bank, Africa 50, and African Union and other partners. AGE would mobilize $100 million for the preparation of projects, $400 million for the development of projects, and $10 billion for the financing of infrastructure, green infrastructure project. This initiative would cover notably green hydrogen, urban transport, green urban transport, infrastructure to recharge batteries, renewable batteries, water, and sanitation. I am pleased that AGE, which has hosted 9 heads of states and government at the summit for a new financial pact, which was held last year in Paris, as well as other partners for development, promoters of project and institutions, financing institutions. I'd like to seize the opportunity to thank Dr. Tal, who has really done the financing for the initiative, and thank you very much for your financing and for your partnership. The African Development Bank, the Commission of African Union, and Africa 50 have been playing a key role in Asia. Your Excellency, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the future of Africa is green. So Let's green all the infrastructures in Africa. As you know, today, even my bow tie is green, as you can see. Together, we would make Africa the heart of green Africa, green infrastructure in the world. Africa50 and our partners will make this project a reality. I thank you all for the support that you've been bringing Africa50. And I wish you, once again, welcome and thank you for your kind attention.
Madam Prime Minister, the President of the National Assembly, Presidents of institutions of the Republic, the President of the African Development Bank Group, Director General of Africa50, Honorable Ministers, members of the Board of Directors of Africa50, ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, let me first of all wish you a warm welcome and a brotherly welcome to Lome. And indeed, we are happy that you selected our capital city to hold your AGM for Africa50 and the Infra for Africa Forum. We are honored as being a land of meetings, sharing of opportunities. Through this, we express our readiness to grow together and capacity to enrich ourselves mutually. Therefore, please feel at home. Please take some time out and discover the beauties of Lome and its outskirts. This morning's ceremony is an opportunity for me to celebrate a vision of Africa, united and prosperous, that progresses through the work of his children. This vision translates day in, day out in commitment and action. Dear Akiyemi Adesina, this is a beautiful opportunity for me to once again acknowledge and indeed command your outstanding merit in building Africa, hardworking, productive, and well-developed. We aspire to. As Africans, we are grateful to you, Managing Director Africa50, through your platform, which stands out through its effectiveness, impact of its intervention. You are evidence of the fact that our continent can generate homegrown solutions that are innovative and relevant to address the challenges of growth and development. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Africa50 has the following mission: to fill the gap when it comes to financing infrastructure in Africa. I must say that the tip of this Infra for Africa Forum is indeed well aligned in the DNA of our institutions. We are in to find viable solutions for a united Africa that is in control of its destiny. But we need to be very careful about the fact that we need to forge new alliances to guarantee the prosperity of the continent for the benefit of all citizens. This being said, where does the problem lie? First of all, there is huge needs in terms of infrastructure all across the continent, and that is indeed the condition for development. Without roads, bridge, port, airports, without hospital, without schools, without power plants, without power networks, communication network, water supply, indeed, there is no possible development in Africa. Needs in terms of infrastructure are huge, and the figures, very approximative, are impressive. We need to invest more than $100 billion, and this is at the heart of our roadmap. We do have assets. It has the the deepest natural port in the sub-region. And Togo is a logistic hub that seeks to serve the neighboring countries. But to leverage on these assets, there must be massive investment. Thus, the question, how do we fund this infrastructure and investment? Each and every one, because of your responsibility, you've been looking for the needs to build and maintain infrastructure, managing budget infrastructure financing, and seeking private financing. For some years now, a new constraint has established itself in such a complex equation. You said it, dear listener, we need to embed in our infrastructure plans a new imperative. Infrastructure should meet the climate challenges. There must be green infrastructure, and indeed, these will skyrocket the cost. And I welcome the initiative for a green infrastructure. As we speak today, the World Bank believes that in sub-Saharan Africa, the public sector represents more than 90% of infrastructure investment. Does that mean that the states will continue financing 95% of infrastructure in the future? I don't think so. That's the remark that goes as follows. The first remark is that government expenditure will not be enough to achieve the development of infrastructure. We all know the current situation, the medium-term prospects do not have hope for effective growth of financing. The slowdown in the world as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, the Ukraine and Russia war weigh heavily on our capacity and our budgets. In these conditions, the second remark is that involvement of the private sector in financing infrastructure is unavoidable. But private financing risks with return on investment. Return on investment risks with building viable economic model. This is the very first topic. Be bankable. We are all well aware. It's all about the appreciation of investment or investors on political, security, tax, economic and monetary and environment they want to invest. But it's not all about introducing pro-business reforms. Partnership with the state around new industrial policies is of paramount importance to attract foreign capital. And that is the third remark. Involvement of the state is indispensable to attract private capital. Well, people have repeated it. No, we're not just talking of free movement of capitals to satisfy all the needs in investment all across the planet. Through the history, this approach has never lived up to expectation. Opening the capital market did not lead to real acceleration of investment of rich countries towards the poor countries. And sometimes it's the other way around. Capitals even stepped back, according to IMF, that dwelt with that paradox. So, major privatization projects in the 90s showed that the quality of institutions should not be neglected. Without a stable and consistent regulatory framework, attracting capital cannot be done. This will be to the detriment of development. We need to create a pro-business environment. It is therefore the responsibility lies with us to guarantee a stable economic and transparent environment, and that will satisfy the needs and constraints of the investors. Fourth remark, I would go further than that. We experience in northern countries the return of industrial policy. So we must be bold. We need industrial policies, private financing, which I wish for should be embedded in our overall development policies. Public financing and private financing should be more frequent. We're not just talking about budgetary imperative, it is also positive when it comes to resilience. That is what is shown through the internet networks, which is widely developed by private operators. That explains today extreme resilience of these infrastructure. So it is through this productive partnership that the involvement of the private sector in infrastructure will be built in tandem with public authorities concerned. A very last remark to conclude: partnership between the public and private partnership sectors will be should be profitable. Profitability depends on the capacity to actually grow the scale of the projects based on the financial constraints. This is what we mean being scalable. The second topic of this forum, it also depends on standardization of projects. This is the third topic, be replicable. Standardization will allow important economy scale on building and operation. It can also apply to preparatory studies. These are key elements for the execution of effective projects. To conclude, let me lay out my hands to development partners, the necessary cooperation between public and private financiers, and as well as public commitment to improve business climate and having industrial policies. This can be done without the support of institutional partners. So I count on development partners to assist us on two main projects. First of all, it's a demand, a plea. Assist us in preserving our capacity to invest. As many of us have security expenditures that are on a higher side, we definitely need to contribute to collective security. This has to be translated to the support to our financial situation. And indeed, it's important when it comes to crisis, development partners should further get involved in de-risking of private investment, including guarantees. This is a condition so that the PPP leads to beautiful opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the reflections which I believe will feed your discussions as part of your AGM and the AGM for Africa 50. I thank you for your kind attention.